On the day of judgment, as Dave stood before the throne, he was not a criminal. He was not immoral. He was a man who had suffered deeply. Though educated, he struggled for years to find stable work. To provide for his family, he labored with his hands, exhausting his body day after day. Poverty followed him, and tragedy struck when 2 of his children died because he could not afford proper medical care. Each night, grief pressed heavily on his soul. The silence of his home became unbearable. In that pain, he did not cry out in prayer. Instead, he went to a small bar and drank a few bottles, not to celebrate, but to forget, not to rebel, but to escape his thoughts. He told himself it was only moderate. He believed it helped him survive the night. But this judgment was never about alcohol itself. It was about where his heart ran when life broke him. When suffering came, he did not seek refuge in God. He sought relief in a bottle. And in that moment, something quiet but dangerous happened. What was meant to be a temporary comfort became a place of dependence. The issue was not what he drank. The issue was what he trusted. Standing before the throne, Mr. Dave defended himself. He insisted that his drinking was moderate. He did not steal. He did not kill. He did not live in immorality. He worked until his body was worn down, and he buried 2 children with his own hands. To him, a few bottles at night did not feel like sin. They felt like survival. Scripture itself speaks of wine bringing gladness to the human heart. Even Jesus drank wine. Timothy was advised to use a little wine for his stomach and frequent illnesses. Mr. Dave believed these words justified his actions. He was not drunk in the streets. He was not violent or reckless. He drank quietly, privately, only to calm his sorrow and find sleep when grief refused to loosen its grip. But moderation does not sanctify replacement. Wine was never given as a refuge, nor was it meant to carry the weight of a broken soul. When pain came, Mr. Dave did not bring his burden to God. He carried it to the bar, night after night. What began as a small comfort slowly took the place of prayer. This judgment was not about alcohol alone. It was about trust. When suffering demanded a refuge, he chose a bottle instead of God. And anything trusted more than God, even in moderation, becomes a substitute fate quiet, familiar, and ultimately destructive. The voice of judgment answered him. This was not a trial about intoxication. It was a trial about trust. When pain came, Mr. Dave did not run to prayer. He ran to alcohol. And scripture is clear. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed. Yet when oppression came, he chose a bottle, not God. It was written long before his suffering began. Woe to those who rise early in the morning to run after a strong drink. This was not condemnation of wine itself, but of hearts that chase relief apart from God. Mr. Dave made drink his refuge, his comfort, his escape. And when a man builds a refuge outside of God, he reveals where his fate truly rests. This judgment was not about alcohol alone, it was about replacement. When grief crushed his soul, he trusted drink more than the Lord, and anything trusted more than God becomes a judge over the soul. Scripture declares, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end leads to death. What felt reasonable in pain became destructive in eternity." God does not weigh sin only by outward appearance. He weighs the heart. When suffering demanded dependence, Mr. Dave placed his hope in a temporary relief rather than an eternal refuge. And that choice quiet, repeated, and justified revealed a divided trust that could not stand before the scales of eternity. Mr. Dave did not deny God. He did not abandon belief. He insisted that he still trusted the Lord. His problem was not disbelief, but divided trust. When his mind and emotions collapsed under suffering, he chose relief over surrender. He believed in God, yet he leaned on something else for peace. Scripture never commands the faithful to numb their pain. It commands them to bring it before God. Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. But night after night, Mr. Dave carried his burden to the bar instead of the throne of grace. He did not lose faith in theory. He stopped practicing faith in suffering. God does not measure belief by words spoken on calm days. He measures it by where the heart runs in moments of desperation. Mr. Dave prayed with his lips, but his refuge was elsewhere, and refuge reveals lordship. What you depend on for rest, comfort, and peace has authority over you. This is why the judgment pierced so deeply. Mr. Dave was not condemned for being human or for feeling pain. He was weighed because he surrendered part of his heart to something other than God. Faith that does not surrender in suffering becomes fragmented. It believes in God, yet refuses to trust Him fully. And the faith divided between God and substitutes cannot stand whole before eternity. This judgment was not written only for Mr. Dave. It stands as a warning to everyone watching, because the issue exposed here reaches far beyond alcohol. When life breaks people, they run somewhere, and where they run reveals what rules their hearts. Some run to alcohol to quiet the mind, some run to smoking to calm their nerves, some run to sex, chasing intimacy without surrender. Some run to money, believing security will save them. Others disappear into entertainment, parties, or endless scrolling, numbing themselves so they do not have to feel. Different escapes, but the same rebellion. Each one says the same thing to God: I will handle this pain myself. Scripture records God's charge against His people. They abandoned Him, the fountain of living water, and dug broken cisterns that could hold nothing. These substitutes promise relief, but they cannot sustain the soul. They soothe for a moment, then leave the heart emptier than before. God never invited the weary to numb themselves. He said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Yet many come to Him last, only after every escape fails. But when God becomes a final option, instead of the first refuge, He is no longer treated as Lord. This message confronts a quiet truth. Suffering does not create idols, it reveals them. Whatever you reach for, when pain demands comfort, has already begun shaping your eternity. This judgment is not meant to condemn you, but to warn you while there is still time. The truth is simple, yet searching. Where you run, when pain overwhelms you, reveals who truly rules your heart. The sin did not begin with a bottle, a screen, a habit, or a distraction. It began the moment trust shifted away from God. You may say, "I still believe," but belief without surrender cannot save. God was never meant to be your last option after every escape fails. If He is only who you turn to when nothing else works, then He is no longer treated as Lord. Scripture calls us to be sober-minded and watchful, because the enemy targets the wounded who wander alone. God does not ask you to numb your pain. He asks you to bring it to Him. He promises rest, not escape, healing, not replacement. Whatever replaces God in your suffering will abandon you in eternity. But whatever is surrendered to Him can be redeemed. If this message has pierced your heart, do not ignore it. Call upon Jesus today. Turn back while mercy is still extended. Let God be your first refuge, not your final attempt. If you are not ashamed of Jesus, comment, "Lord, help me trust You fully." Like and share this message so the truth can reach more souls. And subscribe to this channel to continue receiving messages that call hearts back to God before it is too late.